What happens when a power-hungry cop crosses paths with a woman who outranks him in every way? Except skin color? It began on a freezing winter night in Charlotte, North Carolina. Snow fell thick and heavy. Just before 11 p.m., the streets were nearly deserted, with only a few cars gliding down Highway 74. Talia Monroe, 38, tactical training commander at the Federal Security Academy, was behind the wheel of a silver-gray sedan. She'd just left a tense meeting at Quantico, Virginia. Several hours' drive behind her now. Hair braided neatly, wrapped in a long wool coat, all she wanted was to get back to her quiet home in the suburbs. Before we go on, if you believe silence shouldn't be the price of justice, hit like and subscribe. Not just to help us keep telling these forgotten stories, but to remind the world, dignity doesn't need to scream to be heard. She drifted through the snow-blanketed roads, already thinking about the hot tea waiting at home. She glanced at the photo of her mother and younger sister, clipped to her dashboard, and smiled softly. She wasn't speeding, she wasn't swerving, she wasn't doing anything to draw attention. But Sergeant Benjamin Crowley, 42, with 17 years in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, saw it differently. He was sitting in his patrol car on the shoulder of Highway 74, gripping a lukewarm cup of coffee. Eyes glued to his phone. A dull shift, no incidents, no adrenaline. Then he saw her sedan roll by, and something clicked. "This is my shot." Crowley tossed the coffee onto the passenger seat and flipped on the red and blue lights. Talia saw them flash in her rearview mirror. Her brow furrowed. She took a slow breath and eased onto the shoulder, both hands on the wheel. Calm gaze. But in her mind, she was already reviewing every protocol she'd ever taught her trainees. The cruiser door slammed shut. Crowley stepped out, tall, broad, with salt and pepper hair. His right hand hovered near his holster, the other gripped a flashlight. He didn't approach the passenger side. He walked straight to her driver's window. "License and registration," he said, no greeting, voice flat. Talia kept her hands visible and lowered the window halfway. "Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped?" He shone the flashlight directly into her face, eyes narrowing. "You were swerving, no turn signal, looked like something was off." Talia raised an eyebrow. She knew she hadn't swerved, and her signal light was working just fine. "I didn't do that," she replied evenly. "License and registration," Crowley repeated, louder now, more clipped. She didn't argue. Calmly, she reached for her wallet on the passenger seat, pulled out her license and registration, and handed them over. Her eyes flicked to his badge, number 4723. She locked it into memory. "This is my personal vehicle," she said clearly, "but I'm a federal officer." Crowley glanced at the ID, barely reacted. His lip curled. "Title doesn't put you above the law." "I never said it did," she answered, tone flat. His voice sharpened. "Step out of the vehicle. I need to run a check." Talia blinked, but stayed composed. Her pulse quickened, but she showed nothing. "On what grounds?" she asked. "I've complied, and I've done nothing wrong. I'd like to know the specific reason." Crowley stepped closer, flashlight clenched. "You're resisting a lawful order." "I'm not resisting," she said, her voice now edged with steel. "I'm asking for clarity. The Fourth Amendment protects me from unlawful searches. You need probable cause." That was it. Crowley snapped. He yanked the door open. Talia hadn't given consent. His hand hovered near his gun. "Out of the car. Now." Talia didn't flinch. Calm and controlled, she reached into the center console and took out her iPhone. She turned on the camera, set it face up on the passenger seat, clearly recording. "For the record," she said firmly, "this interaction is being documented." Crowley's eyes flicked to the phone. A flicker of hesitation, but his ego wouldn't let him stop. "Out of the car. I won't say it again." Talia stepped out. She stood tall. She didn't resist, but she didn't look down either. Even in her plain coat, her presence was unmistakable, commanding, poised. Crowley, now agitated, grabbed her right wrist and twisted, forcing her to turn. She winced at the pain, but didn't cry out. Her eyes stayed locked. In the harsh beam of his flashlight, she saw his face clearly. Benjamin Crowley. He'd once been her trainee at Quantico. He'd once promised to uphold justice. She bit her lip and said nothing, focused on protecting her rights. Crowley stared at her, really looked, and for a moment, the question hit him. Who exactly am I messing with? But he shook it off. He made her do a straight-line sobriety test, like she was some drunk driver. Talia executed it flawlessly. Not a misstep. Not a wasted word. Eyes steady. Still, Crowley wrote her a citation for erratic driving. He handed it to her, coldly. Next time, don't argue with a cop. Talia took the paper without a word, eyes locked on his. Then she turned, got back into her car, gripping the citation tighter than she meant to. But something had shifted in her gaze. Resolve. She drove off into the snow, leaving Crowley standing there, clueless that this piece of paper would come back to haunt him in court. Benjamin Crowley, 17 years in the force, never saw it coming. But that night changed everything. Have you ever met someone so sure they had everything under control, they didn't even see the storm coming? Sergeant Benjamin Crowley, 42, of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, was one of those people. 17 years on the force had carved deep lines into his face and deeper grooves of entitlement into his mind. He dealt with it all: neighborhood disputes, chaotic car wrecks, domestic calls gone sideways, and the name Crowley alone made rookies freeze up the second he walked in. He liked that. The nervous glances, the tight-lipped silence. Crowley didn't ask. He ordered. To him, a badge meant authority. Power. The final word. Whether it was a mouthy teenager or a driver asking too many questions, Crowley never backed down. Never apologized. At CMPD's East Charlotte precinct, everyone knew who he was. Punctual, thorough with paperwork. Quick to act, but also sharp-tongued, easily agitated, a man who could escalate a routine stop with just his voice. No one really challenged him. Not until that snowy night. When Crowley returned to the station after pulling over Talia Monroe, he barely mentioned it. Just sat at his desk, yawned, and typed a quick note into the system. Cited for erratic driving, suspicion of possible impairment. No arrest. No big deal. He detached his body cam, dropped it onto the charging dock like always, and went to grab a cup of coffee. The footage sat untouched for 3 days. In his mind, the matter was done. The next morning in the break room, Crowley leaned back, chuckling with Officer Ryan Torres, the partner who'd ridden with him that night. He sipped coffee, a bag of cookies in hand, and smirked. She thought she was someone important. Had the nerve to record me. Called herself a federal commander. Cute, right? Ryan, 29, looked up, eyebrows tightening. He gripped his water cup a little harder. Commander? You mean Talia Monroe? Crowley shrugged, crunching into a cookie. Yeah, something like that. Black lady with a badge and a big attitude. Said she was federal, probably just showing off. Ryan inhaled slowly. His voice came out careful. Talia Monroe. She used to teach at Quantico. Tactical training, class of 2015. You don't remember? She's a real commander. Served in Afghanistan. Jordan, not some lightweight. You sat in her class, Ben. She taught you the Fourth Amendment. Taught you what power is and what it isn't. You seriously don't remember? Crowley paused mid-chew. His eyes flickered. Somewhere, dimly, he recalled a black woman with a low voice, standing in front of a projector at Quantico, saying things like, "Power protects, it doesn't dominate." But he shook it off. Scoffed. Doesn't matter. Out there on the road, I'm the law. Ryan didn't argue, but his eyes dropped. He stood, shoved his hands in his pockets, and walked out. Out in the hallway, Ryan's hand trembled as he pulled out his phone. He opened the voice memo he'd secretly recorded that night. Crowley's voice crackled through the speaker. Black girl, just shut your mouth. Then came Talia's calm voice, reciting the Fourth Amendment, word for word. Ryan replayed the part where Crowley barked at her to get out of the car. The part where she didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, just stood her ground. Each sentence brought back the memory of his wife, telling him about the way strangers looked at her, about the condescension, the quiet, bitter humiliation. He closed the app, but the weight in his chest stayed. Ryan had left a crack in Crowley's armor, just a small one, but Crowley didn't check the body cam, didn't revisit the ticket. In his mind, it was buried under snow. But it wasn't. The next morning at Carolina's medical center, Talia sat with her right wrist in a cast, laptop open, typing 3 complaints, one to CMPD's Internal Affairs, one to the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, and one to her lawyer, Sarah Windrunner. The video from her phone had already been sent to Sarah, and a copy was quietly making its way through federal channels. Talia wasn't posting on X, wasn't ranting, but every move she made was surgical. Crowley had no idea. He went back on patrol, Still shouting at drivers, barking orders, walking like nothing could touch him. For 17 years, the system had insulated him. Supervisors looked away, unions stamped out complaints, and Crowley believed the rules didn't apply to him the way they did to others. But now, on the other side, stood someone unafraid. Talia didn't yell, didn't resist, didn't break. She documented, followed protocol, and sent one email to the right person. Crowley didn't see the storm coming, not until the envelope marked "Official Investigation" landed on his desk. Talia Monroe wasn't the kind of woman who makes noise for attention. She's the kind who keeps the evidence and waits. What makes someone choose to stand up, even when they know it might cost them everything? Talia Monroe, 38, tactical training commander at the Federal Security Academy, wasn't someone who picked fights. After 15 years of service, 2 tours in Afghanistan and Jordan, and more brushes with danger than she could count, she knew how to let the small injustices go. But this time was different. She wasn't just thinking about herself. She thought about the young recruits she'd mentored, about civilians mistreated into silence, about Black women who swallowed their pride to stay safe. This time, she said to herself, "It stops here." She remembered a former trainee, Maria Alvarez, who once told her about being pulled over in Durham and staying quiet out of fear. If I don't act, Talia thought, who protects them? The morning after the traffic stop, Talia sat in a hospital bed at Carolina's Medical Center in Charlotte, her right wrist in a cast, laptop open, eyes narrowed from exhaustion. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that, but because the night kept replaying in her head. Crowley's voice slicing each word like she was beneath him. His hand too close to his weapon. The way he tried to bait her, push her to snap. She knew that playbook. She'd trained officers on how it unfolds. She also knew that even with video evidence, things could go sideways fast. A Black nurse walked in, name tag reading Maya. She glanced at the cast. "You all right? I've seen cases like this before." Talia nodded, eyes steady. She looked down at her wrist, throbbing with every movement, a sharp reminder of the snowy night. But her stare was cold, unshaken. "I'm not all right," she said quietly, "but I'll handle it." Maya gently closed the door behind her. "If you need anything, just say the word." Talia gave a small, knowing smile, then turned back to her screen. She wasn't seeking attention. She wanted accountability. 15 years in service had taught her to lead with discipline and dignity. Commander wasn't just a title. It was earned, in war zones, in disaster relief efforts, in operations protecting hundreds across 3 continents. But last night, on Highway 74, none of that had mattered. To Crowley, she was just another Black driver who didn't bow fast enough. And what angered her most wasn't just what he did, but how confident he was while doing it. Talia took action. She made 3 calls, one to CMPD Internal Affairs, one to the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and one to attorney Sarah Windrunner, a sharp, well-known civil rights lawyer in Charlotte. She attached the video from her phone. No embellishment, no drama, just the truth and the evidence to back it up. By the weekend, her story was making quiet rounds through federal networks. It hadn't hit the press yet, but Crowley's name was now attached to an internal investigation. CMPD's legal office received notice, and a federal attorney in Raleigh had opened a file. Talia kept working. She showed up at the academy like usual. She didn't mention the stop, unless someone asked. But behind the scenes, she was building. Sarah Windrunner called back with her trademark edge. "This stop wasn't just bad protocol. It's a potential Fourth Amendment violation. There was no probable cause to pull you over, no legal basis to order you out of that car." Talia nodded on the phone. "If this goes to court," she said, "I'm ready." Crowley still didn't believe it would go anywhere. He sat in his cruiser, sipping coffee, cracking jokes with his partner about that snow ticket. Then one morning, a thin white envelope landed on his desk at CMPD. No drama, just a printed page marked, "Official Investigation, U.S. District Court, Western District of North Carolina." He tore it open in the parking lot, thinking it was routine paperwork. A memo, maybe a notice. It wasn't. It was a summons. Plaintiff, Commander Talia Monroe. Charges, constitutional rights violations during a traffic stop. Allegations, unlawful detention, intimidation, abuse of authority. Crowley stood frozen, fingers tightening around the paper. For the first time, the ground beneath him shifted. What happens when a man who believes he's untouchable realizes the spotlight is finally on him? Sergeant Benjamin Crowley stood frozen in the CMPD parking lot, fist clenched around the court summons. He scoffed under his breath. This won't go anywhere. But as he stepped back into the precinct, the air had changed. Colleagues avoided his gaze. Conversations died as he walked by. Officer Jake Miller, once wide-eyed around Crowley, turned his back and pretended to check his phone. In the corner of the squad room, a copy of the Charlotte Observer lay open on a table. The headline read, "CMPD under fire for alleged racial profiling." Crowley felt his throat tighten. 17 years on the job, and this was the first time it felt like the ground might crack beneath him. Later, in the parking lot, a reporter from the Observer intercepted him, microphone already raised. "Sergeant Crowley, any comment on the alleged abuse of power involving Commander Monroe?" Crowley pushed the mic away. "No comment," he muttered. But his eyes twitched under the camera flash. Back inside, Captain Marcus Langston called him into the office. The door shut. The blinds were drawn. "We need to talk, Ben," Langston began, voice low. Crowley sat down, arms folded, shrugged. "What about? That woman from the other night? She's blowing it out of proportion, playing the victim." Langston didn't smile. He tapped a finger on the desk, eyes sharp. "She's not playing anything. Do you even remember who she is?" Langston leaned in. "She taught you at Quantico, Ben. Class of 2015. You once called her the toughest instructor you'd ever had." Crowley sneered. "So what? She's just another black driver trying to feel important. Now she's throwing a fit because I didn't bend the knee." Langston leaned closer. Voice lower. Dead serious. "Talia Monroe is not just some driver. She's a commander at the Federal Security Academy. She's done tours in Afghanistan and Jordan. Her record's cleaner than yours, cleaner than mine, and she's got the whole damn thing on video. Both yours and hers." Crowley gave a shrug, but his smirk didn't reach his eyes. "So what? I'm supposed to apologize because she's got stripes? I followed protocol." Langston shook his head. "No, you didn't. You escalated. You treated her like a threat before you even knew who she was, and now you're going to court. And when this blows up, and it will, this city will burn." Crowley bit his lip. For the first time, no quick comeback. In his mind, he tried to rationalize. "I didn't touch her. She wasn't arrested." But the summons was clear. 3 weeks from now, U.S. District Court, Western District of North Carolina. And around the precinct, whispers were spreading. The sideways glances in the locker room. The murmurs that stopped when he walked in. No one said anything outright, but Crowley could feel it. He wasn't the predator anymore. He was bleeding, and the pack could smell it. Meanwhile, across town in Charlotte, Talia was preparing differently. No press conferences, no social media threads demanding attention. She met Sarah Windrunner at a modest law office in Uptown, the glow of a flickering neon sign reflecting off the window. They went through the footage frame by frame. Talia recounted the incident, voice steady. No dramatics, just precision. Sarah, hair tied in a tight bun, tapped her fountain pen on the table. "You sure you want to take this to court? It's going to be public. It'll follow you." Talia nodded, eyes unflinching. "Good," she said. "I've been quiet long enough." Sarah paused, looked her in the eye. "Most people would let this go." Talia's voice dropped. "This isn't just about me." She wasn't after a settlement. She didn't want hush money. She wanted a verdict, a public marker that power does not justify harm. That silence is not the only option. Talia stood for everyone who'd ever been dismissed, yelled at, or threatened beneath the glow of a patrol car's lights and the shadow of a badge. She sipped her coffee, thinking of the trainees who once sat through her lectures on justice, some of whom now wore the same uniform as her opposition. On the day of the hearing, Talia walked into the U.S. District Court for the Western District of North Carolina, dressed in full commander's uniform. Medals gleamed across her chest. She stood tall. Not arrogant, but unmistakably someone who had served her country, respected the law, and now demanded that same respect in return. Crowley was already seated. He turned, saw the uniform, and just like that, his usual smirk dissolved. But the real trial hadn't even started. As Talia took the witness stand, the courtroom leaned forward. It was packed, not with reporters, not yet, but with her colleagues from the Federal Security Academy and officers from CMPD. Uniforms and suits sat shoulder to shoulder beside everyday civilians from Charlotte. No one spoke, but the weight in the room was real. Talia placed her hand on the Bible, took her oath, and scanned the courtroom, pausing for just a beat on Crowley, as if to say, "I taught you better than this." For a moment, she saw the young recruit from 2015, the one who once lit up when they talked about justice. Now all she saw was emptiness. She bit her lip and looked away. How could a routine traffic stop pull back the curtain on an entire system of injustice? To most people, it was just a case of an officer overstepping. But to Talia Monroe, it was the boiling point of everything she'd witnessed for years. Inside the U.S. District Court for the Western District of North Carolina, Benjamin Crowley sat at the defense table, stiff in a gray suit, jaw clenched. His attorney, Ethan Caldwell, leaned in to whisper something, but Crowley didn't blink. His eyes were locked on the judge. Then, Talia's name was called. She rose, smoothed her commander uniform, and walked to the stand with the calm of someone who'd once led units through combat zones. No rush, no hesitation. The room followed her. The medals across her chest caught the courtroom lights. She didn't command attention. She demanded respect, simply by standing there. The judge cleared his throat. "Commander Monroe, thank you for your service. You may begin." Her lawyer, Sarah Windrunner, stepped forward. Her voice was sharp, precise. "Commander Monroe, can you walk us through the night of February 14th? Talia spoke with even tone, measured, steady. "I was driving home from a seminar at the Federal Security Academy around 10:30 p.m. Sergeant Crowley pulled me over on Highway 74. I wasn't driving erratically. I showed no signs of impairment. I complied. I asked reasonable questions. He responded with hostility." She looked across the room. "He demanded I exit my vehicle without explanation. When I asked for a reason, he raised his voice. That's when I began recording." Sarah nodded. "Did you refuse any lawful order?" "No." "Did you resist?" "No." "Did you clearly state your identity?" "Yes. I told him I was a federal officer driving my personal vehicle." The courtroom was silent. No coughing, no rustling, only her voice and the scratch of pens across legal pads. Then came the footage. First, the video from Talia's phone. Clear image, clear audio. Crowley's voice was clipped and aggressive, his posture overpowering. Then, dashcam footage from the patrol car, Talia driving smoothly in lane, turn signal on, no erratic movement, no signs of intoxication. Finally, the body cam. Frame by frame, the court watched, Crowley's hand hovering near his gun despite Talia's full cooperation. An unnecessary field sobriety test, the smirk he gave when she passed it perfectly. The jury said nothing, but the weight in the room was heavy. Then came cross-examination. Ethan Caldwell approached with that practiced, polished tone of false courtesy. "Commander Monroe, with all due respect, isn't it possible Sergeant Crowley was simply following procedure?" Talia met his eyes, didn't blink. "No. Isn't it possible he was concerned for your safety, or someone else's?" "I was in my lane, sober and calm. There was no safety risk." "Then why record the interaction?" "Because silence doesn't protect you. I wanted clear evidence." Caldwell nodded slowly, trying to dig. "Don't you believe officers should have discretion during traffic stops?" Talia answered, voice low, deliberate. "Discretion must come with accountability. A badge isn't a free pass, it's a responsibility." The room froze. Even the judge arched an eyebrow. The jury exchanged glances. Some leaned forward. Then, Crowley's turn. Not to testify, not yet, but to sit and watch himself, frame by damning frame, every shout, every sneer, every time he acted like Talia didn't exist. Sarah Windrunner leaned in, calm but sharp. "Sergeant Crowley, why did you escalate?" He clenched his fists. His voice was tight. She was evasive. "Did she disobey any lawful order?" "She asked questions." "Is asking questions illegal?" Crowley hesitated. "No." "Did she yell? Threaten you?" "No." "Then what made you push the situation further?" Silence. Crowley looked down. No answer. Sarah didn't stop. "Sergeant, were you aware she was a federal commander?" "No, not at the time." "And if you had known?" Crowley's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Maybe. I'd have handled it differently." Sarah didn't react right away. She turned to the jury, eyes sharp. Then she said, "The badge is not a free pass to trample the Constitution." The courtroom went still. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first crack in Crowley's armor. The jury stared at him, then at Talia. And in the back row, Ryan Torres sat hands deep in his pockets, gripping the phone that held a secret recording from that snowy night. His eyes flickered, and his conscience stirred. Can justice change a person, or an entire system? Inside the U.S. District Court for the Western District of North Carolina, the moment Crowley muttered, "Maybe I would have handled it differently," the truth cracked open. That night, he didn't see Talia as a person. He saw a black driver who didn't lower her eyes fast enough. And now, the courtroom saw it too. But the verdict would define what justice really meant. 3 days later, the courtroom was quieter. No federal uniforms, no rows of CMPD officers standing behind her. Just Talia, her attorney Sarah Windrunner, and a few curious Charlotte residents following the case. Crowley sat beside his lawyer, Ethan Caldwell. His fingers interlocked tightly. He tried to hold a neutral face, but his jaw was clenched, like he was swallowing something bitter. Judge Margaret Dillon shuffled the papers in front of her, her voice steady. In the case of Monroe versus Crowley, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff. Crowley froze. Talia sat tall, eyes unwavering. The judge continued. The court finds a violation of constitutional rights during the traffic stop and unlawful detainment. Sergeant Crowley's conduct did not align with CMPD protocol or basic professional standards. No applause, no gasps, just the quiet gravity of justice. Caldwell leaned in, whispered, "We'll appeal." But his voice lacked conviction. Judge Dillon delivered the final ruling. While no criminal charges are being filed at this time, the plaintiff is awarded $52,000 in damages. This verdict will remain a matter of public record. CMPD and the Department of Justice will receive copies for internal review and policy assessment. Talia didn't smile. She didn't raise a fist. She simply nodded, as if saying to herself, "It's done." Outside, Crowley stood on the courthouse steps, hand over his face as cameras from the Charlotte Observer flashed. He didn't speak, just walked briskly to his car. The door slammed shut behind him. Inside the hallway, Talia checked her phone. A message from Sarah. "We won. Case closed." Sarah caught up to her. "You could have asked for more," she said. Talia shook her head, her voice low. "It wasn't about the money." The verdict spread quickly. The hashtag CMPD accountability gained traction, flooded with stories of misconduct across Charlotte. At Marshall Park, a small group of residents held signs reading "Justice equals truth," singing the civil rights anthem, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around." A young woman posted a video to X. "Talia stood up, so will we. Justice for Talia." Inspired by the movement, Laura Bennett, a 45-year-old administrative worker at CMPD and a former student in Talia's 2019 community training program, leaked internal documents anonymously. They revealed policy violations inside CMPD and ignited further outcry. Back at the courthouse, Sarah looked at Talia, a little surprised. "You really think this will change anything?" Talia stared out the window. Sunlight spilled across the Charlotte skyline. "I'm not sure," she said, "but maybe next time he pulls someone over, he'll think twice." A week later, CMPD suspended Crowley pending an internal investigation. Rumors swirled. Some said he'd be pushed to a desk. Others said it was the end of his career. The badge that once shielded him was now cracked, exposing everything behind it. At the Federal Security Academy, Talia returned to her work. She trained recruits, handled missions, acted like the trial had never happened. She declined interviews, didn't want to be called a hero. But in her classroom, the message was clear. Power exists to protect, not to oppress. And in the back row, Ryan Torres, who had just submitted the secret recording to CMPD investigators, nodded quietly. Can a single moment forever change how we understand power? Talia Monroe knew that justice wasn't just a ruling on paper. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to break to prove you've been wronged. Sometimes quiet conviction leaves the deepest mark. But she also knew winning in court was only the beginning. What mattered most was what came after. 3 months after the trial, Talia stood in a training hall at the Federal Security Academy in Charlotte. Before her sat a group of new recruits, uniforms still smelling like fresh fabric, eyes bright with ambition. They had just joined the force, eager to learn. Today, she wasn't talking about tactics or threat assessments. She was talking about leadership, the kind that shows when no one is watching. She stepped to the center of the room, voice low and steady. "Do you think this uniform automatically earns you respect?" A few hands went up, some hesitant, others confident. Talia smiled softly. without judgment. I get it, but here's the truth. Respect isn't something you're given. It's something you earn, choice by choice, day by day. She paused, letting the words sink in. In the back, a young cadet stopped tapping their pen. Talia continued. The badge, the rank, the authority, they don't shield you. They weigh on you. And if you can't carry that weight with discipline, you don't deserve to carry it at all. The air grew heavy, not stifling, but thoughtful. She rested a hand on the desk, thumb tracing the spot where her wrist had once been in a cast. Her gaze swept across the room. When I was stopped on Highway 74 by an officer who had once been my student, I could have yelled, I could have panicked, I could have stayed silent. She met their eyes, voice unwavering. But I didn't. I turned on my phone. I filed the report. I stood in court and told the truth. In the last row, Ryan Torres sat still, head slightly bowed, fingers clenched around his notebook. The recording he submitted to CMPD still echoed in his mind. Talia pressed on. That officer believed his badge made him untouchable, until he saw me. Not just in the medals I wear, but in how I stood my ground. That is what leadership looks like. Silence, not indifference, understanding. She shut off the projector. The blue glow faded. She looked up. Lead with character. Serve with integrity. You don't just wear the uniform. You carry the legacy of those who came before, and a duty to those who will come after. She stepped down from the podium. No applause, no thank yous. The lesson had already landed. In the back row, a brown-skinned cadet scribbled a note in her book. Always film. No 2-4. She leaned over to her neighbor and whispered, I want to be like Commander Monroe. From across the room, Talia received a text from Maria Alvarez. You changed my life, Commander. After class, Ryan approached her, voice low. Commander Monroe, I'm sorry I stayed silent that night. You were right. We have to speak up. Talia nodded gently. Her eyes softened. You did the right thing, Ryan. And then she ended, simply. Power without accountability is just an empty shell. Speak up, stand firm, and when you see wrong, don't look away. Silence protects the guilty, but courage protects the rest of us. If you've stayed with us this far, maybe you've asked yourself, would I be strong enough when justice doesn't stand with me? Maybe you've never seen the inside of a courtroom, but if you've ever been dismissed because of how you look, if you've ever been questioned instead of heard, you are not alone. Leave a comment below, not to vent, but to let someone out there, someone quietly enduring just like you, know they are not alone either. And if this story made you feel seen, if it made you breathe a little easier, hit subscribe to support this channel, not just because we need an audience, but because the world needs more people who refuse to accept silence as destiny.